talk about the things that we're going to go through. First, we're going to talk about the overview on contracts analytics and artificial reporting. We're going to do a brief demonstration. I'm going to talk about search and reporting, give some examples, some real-world examples today of things you might want to see. Make sure everything works for you. Next, after that, we're going to go through metadata extraction, clause identification. Make sure we have some evaluation of what the AI is really doing for our clients today and see how it's simplifying the process and making contract intake work. And finally, we're going to talk about some COVID-19 specific risk factors. A lot of things going on in the economy right now, a lot of things going on with people's health. I hope you guys are all feeling well. But one of the things we're going to talk about is this is actually going to have a relatively large impact on business in the short run. And to make sure that you have the tools necessary to go down that path, to make sure that you're well prepared. And finally, at the end of it, we're going to talk about give some questions and answers, about 10 minutes. Feel free to bring those questions without, we'll flick them out. So just to kick off, well, 1 second, I am losing my voice. I'm going to drink a little glass of water. Okay. And my apologies for that. So we're going to talk about search and reporting a little bit. I'm going to go talk about one of the things that matter is we want to make this a process for users. It has to be an easy process. We want to make sure that when people are looking for results, they can find them, that it's intuitive. We've all been searching for documents and things on the internet for years. Google's been in my life as my entire adult life, even back to my high school days. So it's been something that's been relevant to me for ages. We need it to be something that works on those structures. At the same time, we need to be a little more powerful. Contracts aren't just finding websites looking at funny cat pictures. They need to be a lot more in depth and understand what is important about them. So we want to make sure that those search results are easy to go through. The second thing I'm going to talk about right now is reporting. Differences, we go through a little bit of process reporting, what matters in the process, and talk about metadata inside of it. So as I bring this up, I'm going to bring up a share of our instance and talk about search just briefly. So oftentimes when a user comes into our page, they have a very clear set of goals and things they want to find. So it could be a specific term, it could be a specific area, it could be something they want to know. But the important thing is that there is some process that's already taken place in their mind of what they want to find. Sometimes it's a very specific document. That's a very easy case to talk about. You can type in the document number or contracting party name, and you have some drop downs here to go through and say, to go through the process and say, hey, these are the things I want to look for: the business unit, the contract manager, contracting party. But oftentimes, and I think this is a bit relevant today, you say, I want to look for something very specific. I'm going to look for contracts that have force majeure. Now, you may want to know whether or not you're covered in instances in which things are shut down. You might want to just find some sample language. It may be a number of reasons why you want to find this, but you want to look for a force majeure. You do a free text search and look for it. You see here 20 some results come up. You think about it for a second and you say to yourself, actually, I'm really only interested in procurement related results. I don't care about our sales contracts. If they're still buying from us, we're very happy right now. But we want to make sure that what we're covering on our back end is where our costs are coming from, and make sure that as we go down that path, that we know exactly what it is. And so I find this contract and I say, okay, this looks like a relevant agreement. It expires in a few years. It's actually quite expensive for us at $200,000. We want to make sure that this is something that we care about. And I can look at contract details and find very quickly that there are, in fact, a force majeure clause in this contract. I can open the contract and see that contract very quickly. And get all that information right in front of me. So the idea of making the search very intuitive, very clear, is about ensuring that when users open a system and go through it, that they're quickly able to find it. Quickly able to get that information and really bring them to what necessary results make sense to them. So to take back and use that intuitive training that Google has already given us for many years and make it part of our everyday life. And this could be very specific, force majeure. It could be general. I want to look for everything that says warrant, or in this case, it'll also bring up warranty. And maybe it'll talk about areas in which there is linked agreements. So, hey, I looked up warranty or force majeure and I found an agreement. I also want to see what sub-agreements and amendments are related to that, and give all those results in a quick, easy to find place. Now that is working with our standard tools of the Google search we've used for many years and knowing exactly what to go down. The next thing to talk about is advanced search. When I go to advanced search, there is a more robust tool that we have at our fingertips. So if you want something beyond just finding the text you're looking for, you might want to find a specific set of circumstances. So all of these contracts stored in the system have a lot of metadata with them. And inside of that metadata, there are a number of things that you want to know about an agreement. And I brought up here customer agreements, and I want to just scroll down and show that there are a lot of different metadata options. Organizations are very broad in what they want and have a lot of control over what they call their metadata. And so look here, it may be something like payment terms. Do I care about what has payment terms in terms of flexibility, or whether or not using standard warranty period, if that's something that's available. Or in this case, I'll just look at the total value and say I'm going to look at contracts with total value greater than 200,000. As I search for contracts that greater than 200,000, because at this point in time, I'm really concerned with that impact on us. And hit OK, it's going to quickly bring up that list of contracts. Just as we saw before, you have the filters on the left to find it. This is the values, the expiry dates. OK, I want things that expire in the future. Active contracts are what matter. I can look at the summary very quickly and see, hey, these are the contracts, these are related to sub-agreements, these are the amendments that relate to them, and get all that information right away. The next thing I want to talk about when I talk about contracts that are already in the system and they're already looking for and you need information for is actually reporting about them. So it's nice to have contracts. It's nice to know that there are contracts that you can find them and get them easily. But we also want to know about contracts as a whole, as a group. When there is a group of contracts out there, and there are a lot of things you want to know, you want to be able to report on them. It's not just the single, contract you're finding, but how often do we want to know about contracts as a concept? How many of our contracts dealt with this type of clause? How many contracts have this type of analysis? And I can go and I look at these pre-populated reports and I can say, okay, clause usage statistics by contract. And then you notice this report here tells me every contract number, every contract title, what contract type it is, but also what clause categories are being used on it. So, hey, do I have sales agreement clauses? Do I have specific clauses on here? Am I using the default clause? Am I modifying the clause? Am I using alternates or fallbacks? So that if you have a specific need to say, hey, I want to find out every single contract in which I've had this exact type of clause, you can find that in a matter of moments. You can find very quickly to say, hey, these clauses have confidential information. These clauses have these contracts have force majeure. This one it was modified on. These are all the contracts that have the defaults, and you can pull that together. And these prepackaged reports often deal with the process of pulling together contracts, things like how long it took to get to that stage, even elements such as What are the line items or milestones related to a contract? So all the contracts I can see, okay, here's all my key deliverables that are already due or coming due in the next 6 months, or what's overdue, or what payments are coming to me that are overdue that we need to really think about. Really give all that information up front. The other thing to talk about is, we can have those reports and they're very helpful. If you want to know, hey, these are my payments that are going to become due to me, or metrics that I need to hit to get payments to be due to me, or payments that I owe, and metrics that are coming that show that I'm going to get, require payments. That's nice. But we want to make sure that the reporting itself is flexible and so that you can create your own report. So if I go and I click create new report, look at matrix reports or summary reports or tabular reports. You have a lot of options here on what types of contracts you want to create, what type of report you need to be. So in this case, I'm going to, go through and show some of the options with them. So a tabular report's the most simple, and I'll do that in just a moment. I'll just do the quickest possible. We'll do contract title and expiry date. And you'll see that this is a very quick report that just says every contract and when it expires. And you can export this as a CSV or save it as a regular report. We want it to go every day, month, week, year, however often you want it to be sent out. You can filter this. So as I see now, I just included every contract, but maybe I only care about contracts that were signed since last June. I can have those contracts all come up, populate, and have these are when they all expire. So you can get all that information right in front of you very quickly. Really provide that insight right away and let you know, hey, this contract, these type of reports are very quick. So if you have an answer, you can get that. The second type of report to get is, the second type of report I want to talk about is the matrix report. So matrix reports much like a pivot report today, but it has a lot of options in how you pull the groupings and information together. And you can be very specific or very general about what is going on. So I can say, hey, I want to look at the contract across a various number of groups and fees. And just out of time, I will, sort of just scroll through this. But one of the things that makes it even more interesting is that oftentimes you want to see these contracts as a chart and get all that information into a specific chart. So I'm going to go to the charts and highlights, and I do need to make choices before moving on to that. But if I go to charts and highlights, you can see that you can actually make this into a variety of different types of charts so that when you're doing reporting, you can have right in front of you the very easy, clear to use charts for you to have. So when pulling together a contract, it's nice to have a tool, but what's really important now and in the future is that you've got a lot of data and information. You want to be able to find these agreements, and when you want to find them and analyze them, get that information, but you also want to be able to report on it. Run this analysis quickly and get the information in real time. Let's go back PowerPoint for a second, talk a little bit about contract analytics. So one of the things that I talked about briefly during this reporting was when a contract is in the system, you want to be able to talk about the performance and compliance. So this is everything to do with a contract. So as you saw, we actually had the report set up for it, prepackaged when a contract is there to have all of this information ready to go. Every contract can have associated with it milestones. These can be payment or deliverable. These can be due dates, when things are due to you. These can be expiration dates and information and warnings. It is important to have this information in a format that makes sense to you at a contract level. Now, a lot of times we think about this very cleanly at a order level. Hey, there's widgets, they come in, you have a certain dollar amount, did they fulfill that? But one of the things that makes the system flexible is allowing this to work with whatever tools you have. So if you have a contract that is milestone is going to be entirely based on customer sign-off, you can create that milestone and put it in there and have it part of the report, part of the readout, and part of the reporting based entirely on sending it to a user for review. You could choose the user as some of the tools, someone outside the tool, and let them know that there is a quick sign-off. And the flexibility to be very clear. Hey, this is based on payments or deliverables. This is based on sign-off. This is when it's due, and have all of that. And really have all that information right in front of you. So next thing I'm going to talk about is Orbit. Now, Orbit is our artificial intelligence. We want to make sure that things we talked about before are tools and really allow us to emphasize how strong it is to have a contract in the system. But a really thing that's important is getting these contracts in the system in a readable, available, evaluable step. And I want to make sure that this is easy, risk-free, that it really lowers the threshold for taking your 100,000 contracts that are sitting on people's desks and putting them into the system to use. So a couple of things to talk about in production today. This is being used. We have a full service OCR, natural language processor. We're pulling out metadata from contracts today across the nation, across the globe, and getting that data so that people can analyze and use it for contract writing, review, but also being used for storage and repository for past contracts, for evaluation reporting. So then in real time, we'll be able to take this data, put it in your database, and very quickly give you the tools necessary to work with this. We have a couple of different engine options for that OCR. As you see, Abby and Nuance is sort of a champion challenger model. Which one's working better? Always on the marketplace looking for something better. But our NLP runs on top of that just to make sure that these are working with your contract language. So there's often times when you have 150 DPI document come in and it looks pretty ugly through the OCR. The NLP will read this and then take it and say, okay, this looks like April 11111. Okay, I actually know that's April 11th, 2011. And then it'll do that analysis because even though that looks like APR I with 250 dots branch, it does the quick and reasonable way of evaluating contracts. And then we'd have the metadata extraction once that goes through on top of that and starts to compare clauses to what's considered acceptable behavior internally. I'm only going to talk a little bit more through these slides. You could read them as a voiceover, but I'm going to move over and show this Orbit in process and let you know exactly, hey, this is what we're looking for in the system. We want to make sure that we get the accurate results so that when your team picks it up, they can find it. And the key, though, is not just giving first-level results, but putting it in a format that allows you to make it perfect results. It's not a standalone AI one and done. It's assisting your team to have these tools. So if we look at this, give me just 1 second to bring up the AI. As I log in, my apologies. Logging in multiple systems. So it's a very simple system. I want to create a batch. So we'll go through, this will be an MSA test. I actually have an MSA, it's a procurement service agreement sitting on my desktop to go through. So I'll do a sales distribution agreement. It's a little easier for me to get to right now. I'll call this distribution test. Okay. Browse files. If you notice here, you actually have the ability to drop many files at once. You can work with up to 2,000 files per upload. Goes a little slower when you have 2,000 or up to 50 megabytes. If you need larger than 50 megabyte files, this can be done differently. But this is designed so that anyone can do this in a matter of moments. This is distribution service agreement. It's a PDF. It's got a few markups on it, so it's not completely clean, but hit analyze. The system's going to do those things we talked about. The OCR is going to run on this PDF. The NLP is going to going to run on top of that to make this legible, make it sure it's everything's correct. And then on top, after that, we're going to run it through our AI engines to do the processing. So I see now it just moved over to completed. I'm going to walk through the AI metadata extraction first. This happens to be my first and a favorite part. The clauses does come up first, but I do want to talk about the metadata extraction first. Notice here on the left side, there's a lot of metadata that are pulled out. If I were to click on something, it will take me right to in the document where that metadata came up. And then when I said things, I emphasize, hey, this is about emphasizing human elements. When you have an AI tool, you want to make sure that you understand the results you're going to get and how you can improve those to what you need to work with. So if I look at this and it says state of California, that's right. That's an accurate result. If I code this and have run this through the process of 1,000 times, state of California is going to be marked as correct by most reviewers most of the time. However, you as an organization might never want state of California. You might want to just call it California. You might have specific reporting or internal needs to call it California. And so you have the tools here to make sure that you can snip it down to an editable section very quickly. You also have inside of our tool the ability to highlight text and choose that as other metadata as well. So we picked that as governing law. That is clearly the governing law. There's not really a jurisdiction called out in this document, but if I did call out a jurisdiction, I'd say it was California. I could just highlight and click jurisdiction, and you can see down here, jurisdiction is filled out. So our goal here is to take the intake of contracts and metadata and take it from something that's nearly impossible to do efficiently and make it something that humans are instead correcting minor errors or adding supplemental information that's important, but difficult to find. Maybe it's even things that aren't in the contract. A lot of metadata may not exist in the contract. You might want to store it with it, but it's really about making that process as easy as possible. The second part of the clause of the AI right now, the clause comparison I want to talk about. Taking this process is a little different. So the first part's pretty easy, straightforward, and it's clear, right? You know what metadata you want as an organization. You know exactly what you want to store from a contract. The tool is trained to get it. The second part, by contract subtype, there is inside your organization a series of approved language. And you say, when we have a distribution contract come in, we want it to have this confidentiality clause. We want it to have this indemnity clause. We want it to have this limitation of liability clause. And all of that information is nice, and it is something that is relevant to you. But when somebody else sends in paper or you have an old document you're running through, you want to know how similar that is to what you have today. So if I go here, I click on limitation of liability, it takes me right to the limitation of liability in the document that was provided. And I can look at it and say, how close is that to our approved language today? And I see here that it's at 99.13%. So it's very clearly very similar to what we already have in our proven system. So it is something that we know is consistent. And we can use this to do a couple of things. Look for documents, clauses that don't exist that you want in an agreement. There's nothing that's above 90% confidence for a force majeure. Or to see areas of high risk. Their limitation of liability is much different than our limitation of liability. Make sure we have the idea of where that divergence takes place and really get that information so we know exactly what change is taking place. So this is just a general high level of things customers are using today to drive real value using AI. Pulling metadata, making the intake of contracts or the review of past paper very quick and very easy. And again, all this would also feed back into those search and reporting we talked about earlier. So reporting is great, but in order to have effective reporting, you really need actual data inside your system. You need this to be already in your system and have all that information. If you don't have that, data and that back-end process, that back-end analysis already filled out, then you're not reporting on anything. You're just making a chart. The next thing that we'll talk about is Orbit Projector. And so One of the things to talk about in Order Projector is what is our goal? What do we want to understand? So we are going to specifically focus in the next few minutes, talk about how this is going to work with COVID-19 situation, and go through that process. So let's talk about the process of setting this up. One of the things that we do before we go through that, I want to talk about Order Projector as a whole. Order Projector is designed to give you the information about what is in a contract and what is a risk area for your contract. It is, you know, in this tool right now, if I go through and back into our tool, see it's already live. We can see, hey, what is inside the contract? What type of agreements are there? And where is it going to tell us where risk already exists inside the agreement? What we want to do now is actually focus that for the short run into what types of risks do we care about right now? What is it that we need tagged and highlighted in a specific number of contracts? And we're talking now the short run for up to 10,000 documents. Hey, we have 10,000 documents. We want to run this through in a few days. Give you a sample of exactly what is important, what types of clauses are there, and go through it. So giving some sample in front of you. You run a contract through. One of the things that people have talked a lot to us about now are force majeure, termination for convenience, volume requirements or volume discounts, and really pulling out contracts where that matters. So in this one example here, force majeure was highlighted to really let you know that it's in there. And this could be on a sales side agreement. So someone is going to come back to you and say, hey, we can't pay for this. We're sorry, our contract covers this. Or this could be something that you need to bring to your supplier and say, you know, the last 3 months, I know you've seen this. This is clearly under our, you know, force majeure clause. And you see the one that is actually highlighted here says intervention of government or outside reason control of ACME. These are very specific. You're going to need to know inside of each of your agreements what the language covers and what it does not. There are a number that really only cover weather-related issues. And there are some that cover absolutely anything that can happen. You need to very quickly pull out these force majeures and see whether these contracts can be evaluated and have that analysis come up quickly and effectively. Also, you know, there is part of this process is looking at whether or not these force majeures are consistent, whether you would risk them as high risk or low risk, and really part of allowing you to train the tool so that when you're looking at your 10,000 agreements, you look at the first few and get results, you know quickly that it's using that data to train more. And I apologize, I'm trying to run through this very quickly so we have time for some questions while this goes through. Make sure that we have the analysis at the end. So I have got to this point. I'm going to look through the chat for any questions that came in and answer some of those questions and let people know what's going on. So start bringing these up. First question I see is, what is the difference between process reports what is the difference between process reports and contract data reporting? Why are they different? So process reports are a lot about how the contracts are put into the system or what's happening with contracts as they're created. Now, in terms of the process reports, there's also elements of the contract such as line items or obligations that are listed. They are different because they are not specific to the metadata inside a contract, but things that are created around the contract. There are ways to combine these two, but oftentimes the contract data reporting is more of an ad hoc report of something you want to know an analysis of right away. whereas the process has to do with bringing up contract itself. So second, how Altria handle clause analytics when the contract started on third-party paper. So if a contract starts on third-party paper, one of the things I talked about with the AI and intake is that you use that process to determine which clauses are important to be marked in terms of the metadata. So it's not unusual for organizations to have specific metadata fields related to what clauses exist, things such as payment terms, warranty, and obligations. And all of theirs there. The question is, do all customers use the same Orbit, and is Orbit a bot? So let's talk about a little bit different. So Orbit is the AI system. We do have a machine learning element that can be used or opted out of based on the specific clients. There is client-specific training for that tool, for that user. So it may be that you are using the overall data set that had been populated by everyone's results and all of their learnings, but also learned specifically on your own information. So that's put in your own machining learning sets. But it may be that you opt out of providing your data back to that. It would be anonymized data if you did provide your data back to that, but it is something you could opt out of, and then you would not be part of that training session. Your data would not be part of that overall training element. It is an individual instance and have all that individual standalone, so nobody would see your data. All your data is kept in a separate database. It's just the machine learning backend has an anonymized training set that can be used. So besides force majeure, what clauses are important to look for an economic time? So a lot of things that are coming up lately, and one, termination for convenience, seeing a lot of people asking, hey, can we identify everything that has that, or terms for termination convenience? Whether or not there is it ties to economic data. So a lot of agreements have CPI or CPI minus housing or CPI minus energy as a price factor, and that bound within certain elements that comes up, quite frequently. Exchange rate ties come up quite frequently. All that information is inside of there and really providing that. Also, ability to pay clauses exist, and they come out. In cases like this, there's a lot of that's happening where things are going down. And those are the key elements that we see coming up quite a bit on that. Another question. The other questions, timeline in order to deploy this and get it to use, and a little more complex. How long does this take to deploy this? How much training is needed? So a lot of different questions going on there. So the system itself is pre-trained for a lot of the things you're already looking for. This comes up considerably. Force majeure we've focused on recently as something to bring up. It does not take that much training to get a good result at, say, 80% result towards 80 to 90 towards 90% convergence. And 80% here does not mean that you're wrong 20% of the time. It means that your certainty factors are really close to where they need to be, and really gets all that information very close to what happens. Once you get a set of 10,000 documents, those can be run for an analysis in a matter of days, under a business week, and given a report out. If we're enabling it for your team to have that access and allowing them to touch into it, setting up an instance for them, again, if all we're doing is running sort of this COVID-19 evaluation, it's not a time-consuming process, very quick, under a few weeks to give you access to this. And it really is going to depend on how much you want to configure this for your individual use, in terms of training to specific clauses and language, versus how much are you okay using the general training that's already been done. And that seems to be all of the questions that come in. I tend to talk even faster than Arthur, but I am happy to hang on and see if anybody else has any more questions. And otherwise, I will let you guys have back, about 10 minutes of your day.